Welcome back to Binge Worthy Stories. Today's story is emotional and surprising.
He thought I was resting in the bedroom, but I was actually loading the last of the furniture into a moving truck. By the time he gets home from his business trip with his mistress, he'll find a completely empty house and a signed divorce file on the kitchen floor. Being pregnant didn't make me weak. It made me calculated. 3 months earlier, through the half-open blinds of his office, I watched him wrap his arms around a woman who wasn't me. I didn't say a word. I turned around, drove home, and made his favorite dinner that night. My name is Pauline Nash. I'm 31. And by the time I was finished, my husband didn't have a house, a marriage, or a single answer for the daughter he was about to meet. 22 weeks pregnant, I drove to Francis's office with a new ultrasound photo in my bag. He'd missed the appointment that morning, some emergency call he couldn't get out of. I wanted to surprise him. Show him our daughter's face on the little gray screen. His blinds were half open. I saw him before I reached the door. He had his hand on the back of a woman's neck. She had her forehead against his chest. Neither of them moved for a long second. Neither of them saw me standing there with an ultrasound photo in my hand. I didn't knock. I didn't say his name. I turned around and walked back to my car. I sat in the parking lot for 11 minutes, long enough to memorize her face. Long enough to see her walk out 10 minutes later, laughing at something on her phone, car keys spinning on her finger. I followed her back inside on foot, casual like I belonged there, and read the name plate on her cubicle wall. Claire Ingram, marketing coordinator, hired 8 months ago. And that was only the first thing I found out that year. Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the ending, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. I went home, I made dinner, chicken rice, the green beans he liked. When Francis walked in at 7, I asked how his day was. Long, he said. Boring meetings all afternoon. He kissed my forehead and asked what was for dinner like it was any other Tuesday. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I refilled his glass of water and asked about his boring meetings for another 10 minutes. That was the first time I understood something about myself. I could sit across from a lie and eat dinner with it. The next morning, I skipped my prenatal vitamin argument and called a number I'd bookmarked 2 days earlier, before I even knew why. Paula Vance, family law, downtown Sunbury. Best divorce attorney in 3 counties, according to every review I'd read at 2 in the morning after Francis started working late 3 nights a week. I need a consultation, I told her assistant. Somewhere he won't see the appointment. Paula met me in a coffee shop instead of her office. Smart, careful, no paper trail on his calendar or mine. She was maybe 50, gray streak in her hair, a legal pad already out before I sat down. Tell me everything, she said. Start with the money. I told her about the joint accounts. The house paid off 2 years ago in both our names. The savings account Francis managed that I hadn't looked at closely in over a year. She wrote fast, didn't blink at any of it until I mentioned Claire Ingram's name. Office affair, Paula said. Common, also easy to prove if you're patient. I don't want to confront him, I said. Not yet. Good, she said. Confrontation is for people who don't want to win. That was the moment the plan started, not with anger, with a legal pad and a woman who didn't flinch. Francis, meanwhile, got worse, not more careful. Worse. He stopped asking about my doctor's appointments entirely. I'd come home from an ultrasound with new photos and he'd glance at them for 2 seconds before going back to his phone. When I told him the doctor wanted me resting more in the 3rd trimester, he laughed. Where else are you gonna go? He said. You're 7 months pregnant. It's not like you're running a marathon. I asked him what that meant. He shrugged and said I was being sensitive, hormonal. 2 nights later, he came home smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. I asked about it. He said the office AC broke and everyone was cramped into one conference room all day. I said nothing. I wrote the date down in a notebook Paula had told me to keep, hidden behind the maternity books on my nightstand. The following week, I found a hotel charge on a card statement he thought I never checked. $240 a Tuesday, while he told me he was at a work dinner in the city. I photographed the statement with my phone and texted it to Paula. No comment, just the photo. She texted back one word. Good. Francis started treating the house like a hotel room he was checking out of. He left dishes in the sink for me to find. Wet towels on the bathroom floor, 3 days in a row, like he expected them to disappear on their own. He came home at 11, then midnight, then not at all one Thursday, texting only staying at Mike's, don't wait up with no explanation of who Mike was. I didn't ask who Mike was. I already had a name. It wasn't Mike's. I met Paula again the following week, this time at her office, timed exactly around a prenatal appointment Francis had stopped bothering to ask about. We went through every account, every card, every transfer he'd made in the last 18 months that didn't add up. There was a pattern. Small withdrawals, cash every other week going back almost a year. Dinners charged to a card I didn't use. A hotel loyalty account under his name I'd never seen, with 6 stays logged in the past 4 months alone. He's been sloppy, Paula said, tapping the printout. Sloppy is good for us. What do I do with all this? I asked. Nothing yet, she said. You wait, you document. And you start thinking about how you get him out of that house, without a fight that drags on for 2 years while you're raising a newborn alone. I asked her what that would even look like. She looked at me for a second, like she was deciding whether I could handle the answer. It looks like he comes home one day, she said, and there's nothing left to fight over. I didn't understand what she meant yet, not fully. But I wrote it down anyway, underlined it twice, right under Claire Ingram's name and the date I first saw her hand in Francis's. That night, Francis came home late again, dropped his jacket on the floor instead of the hook by the door, and asked what was for dinner. I told him I hadn't made anything. He sighed like I'd personally ruined his evening and ordered a pizza for one. He didn't offer me a slice. 7 months pregnant, and he ate at the counter standing up, scrolling his phone, while I sat at the table with a glass of water and a growing folder of evidence he didn't know existed. 2 days later, I overheard him on the porch, voice low, laughing at something. I stood just inside the screen door and listened. She's fine, he was saying. She doesn't suspect anything. Trust me. He wasn't talking to a coworker about a project. I already knew who he was talking to. I closed the door quietly and went back to unloading the dishwasher like I hadn't heard a word. That was the night I decided the folder Paula mentioned wasn't just a metaphor anymore. I wanted it real. Typed. Signed. Sitting on a kitchen floor in an empty house, waiting for him to read every page alone. Francis started forgetting things, not real things, convenient things. He forgot the anniversary of the day we bought the house. He forgot I had a growth scan appointment on a Wednesday and scheduled a team lunch over it instead. When I reminded him the night before, he said, "It's just an ultrasound, Pauline. You've had like 6 of them." I went alone. Paula's assistant texted me twice that day, both times about paperwork. Francis texted me 0 times. That weekend, he threw a poker night for 4 of his work friends without asking me first. I found out when 6 men showed up at 7 with beer and a cooler, 7 months pregnant me answering the door in sweatpants. Francis waved from the couch. "Just grab us some snacks when you get a chance, babe." I didn't grab them snacks. I went upstairs and closed the bedroom door. He came up at midnight smelling like beer and cigarettes he swore he didn't smoke anymore, and complained I'd embarrassed him by not coming down to say hi to the guys. "One of them knows Claire," he said. "From the office, you'd like her." I lay very still in the dark. "I'd love to meet her sometime," I said. He didn't catch the way my voice went flat. He never did. The next morning, there were 7 beer bottles left on the coffee table, chip crumbs ground into the rug, and a burn mark on the side table where someone had set down a cigarette. Francis left for work without touching any of it. I photographed the mess before I cleaned it, another entry for the folder Paula kept telling me to build. I met Paula again 2 days later. This time, under the excuse of a birthing class, Francis had no interest in attending anyway. We sat in her car in a parking garage, engine off, heater running against the cold. He had 6 work friends over, I told her. One of them knows about Claire and hasn't said a word to his own wife. Paula didn't blink. "Get names," she said. "If that wife doesn't know, she might talk to you before this is over. Wronged spouses talk to each other." "I'm not doing this to hurt his friends," I said. "You're not," Paula said. "You're building a file. What his friends do with what they learn isn't on you." That was the first time I hesitated about anything Paula told me to do. I asked her, straight out, if any of this bothered her, building cases on people who didn't know they were being watched. She looked at me a long moment. "It bothered me for the first 2 years," she said. "Then I started meeting the husbands. Now it doesn't." I didn't push further. I wrote down the name of the coworker's wife anyway. Denise, I didn't call her, not yet. 2 nights later, Francis came home with a new watch. Expensive, the kind he'd never buy himself without a reason. When I asked about it, he said work had given him a bonus for closing a big account. I checked our joint statement that night while he showered. No bonus deposit. Instead, a $2,100 withdrawal from an account I thought only I used for the baby's furniture fund. I didn't confront him. I photographed the statement and sent it to Paula with one line. The nursery money bought him a watch. She texted back within a minute, "Keep it." That's a good one. The next day, I opened the closet to grab his gym bag and found a receipt for a hotel 2 towns over, dated the weekend of the poker night. Room service charged to the room. 2 in trays. I sat on the edge of the bed holding that receipt for a long time. Not crying, just sitting. My hand rested flat against my stomach, and for a second I thought about how close I was to just walking downstairs and throwing every plate in the kitchen at his head. I didn't. I put the receipt in a folder in the garage behind the paint cans where he never looked. That Friday, Francis told me he wanted to plan a baby moon. A real trip, he said, before the baby came, just the 2 of us. He picked a resort 3 hours away, booked flights, showed me the confirmation on his phone like he was proud of himself. "You deserve it," he said, "before things get crazy." I smiled and thanked him. Inside, something clicked into place, though I didn't understand exactly what yet. I texted Paula that night. "He booked us a trip, 3 days. I think he wants an alibi more than he wants me there." Paula's answer came back fast. "Or he wants a window to disappear in. Either way, keep the dates. Don't cancel anything yet." 10 days before the trip, Francis came home and told me his team needed him for a client emergency the same week. He'd have to push the baby moon, maybe cancel it entirely. Maybe I could still go without him if I wanted. "You paid for both tickets," I said. "I'll get a refund," he said, already halfway up the stairs, phone against his ear, laughing at something someone on the other end said. I stood in the kitchen holding a spatula, dinner half-cooked, listening to him laugh into his phone about a client emergency that didn't sound like any client I knew. I didn't say a word to him that night. I called Paula from the bathroom with the fan running so he wouldn't hear. "He's canceling the trip," I said. "Says work needs him." "Interesting," Paula said. "Ask him where, casually. Don't push." The next morning over coffee, I asked Francis where his emergency client was based. He said the coast, vague, distracted, already reaching for his keys. I asked which coast. He said he had to go, kissed my forehead, and left without answering. That afternoon, I found the real itinerary. Not a client trip. A flight to the same resort he'd originally booked for us, same dates, 1 seat under his name and 1 under a name I didn't recognize until I searched it. Claire Ingram. He was taking his mistress on the baby moon he'd planned for his pregnant wife. I sat with my laptop open on the kitchen table for almost 20 minutes without moving. Then I called Paula. "He's taking her," I said. "The exact trip, the exact resort." There was a pause on the line. Then Paula said something I hadn't expected. "That's not bad news, Pauline," she said. "That's your window. 3 days, confirmed, no way for him to check on the house. You wanted to know what it looks like when he comes home to nothing. Now you know exactly when." I looked down at my stomach. The baby kicked once, hard, right under my ribs like she agreed. "Tell me what to do," I said. "First," Paula said, "you finish the inventory. Every item in that house, every account, every asset, we need it airtight before we touch a single box." I spent the next 4 nights after Francis fell asleep going room by room with my phone camera, photographing furniture, appliances, jewelry, anything with a receipt or a serial number. I cross-referenced it against bank statements Paula had already flagged, matching purchases to accounts, building a spreadsheet that made my stomach turn every time I added a new line. Francis never noticed. He was too busy packing a bag for a trip he told me was in Denver, closing a deal that didn't exist, with a woman whose name was already sitting in a folder behind the paint cans in my garage. 3 nights before he left, he sat across from me at dinner and reached over to take my hand. "I know I've been distracted," he said. "Once this deal closes, I promise, things go back to normal." I let him hold my hand for exactly as long as it took to finish that sentence. Then I picked my fork back up and asked him to pass the salt. He had no idea normal was never coming back. He had no idea what was waiting for him on the other side of that flight. 2 nights before Francis left for his Denver trip, he asked me to help him pack a garment bag. Not because he needed help. Because he wanted an audience while he folded a shirt I'd never seen him wear for a client meeting before, silk, expensive, the kind of shirt a man buys for a woman, not a boardroom. New shirt, I asked. Needed something for the closing dinner, he said, not looking up. I zipped the bag for him and told him to have a safe flight. He kissed my forehead on his way out the next morning, told me not to wait up for his calls since service was bad at the resort, and reminded me to water the plant on the porch. Then he backed out of the driveway whistling. I watched his car disappear around the corner. Then I picked up my phone and called Paula. He's gone, I said. Good, she said. Now we move fast. I need you at my office in an hour. Bring every photo, every statement, everything in that garage folder. I drove to Sunbury with a banker's box on my passenger seat, my hands steady on the wheel in a way that surprised me. Paula's paralegal met me at the door and led me straight to a conference room where 3 years of Francis's carelessness sat spread across a table in neat labeled stacks. This is more than enough, Paula said, flipping through pages. Infidelity, financial mismanagement, a documented pattern of neglect during a high-risk pregnancy. We file for divorce and emergency custody protections the same week he gets back. What about the house? I asked. Paula set down her pen. The house is titled to both of you. You have every legal right to remove your belongings from a home you co-own. What you do this week isn't theft. It's a woman moving her own property. I asked her, straight out, if this was really legal, hiring a crew, clearing the whole house while he was 3 states away with another woman none the wiser. She looked at me over her glasses. Every item that leaves that house today belongs to you or was purchased with joint funds, she said. I've had a paralegal photograph and log every item on your inventory against ownership records for 2 weeks. This isn't revenge, Pauline. This is a legal separation of property, executed on your timeline instead of his. That was enough for me. I signed the petition Paula slid across the table, my hand only shaking slightly on the last line. From there, everything moved like a machine I didn't know I'd built. Paula had already vetted a moving company 2 towns over, one that specialized in discreet, fast turnaround jobs, paid in full upfront, cash. The owner, a woman named Renata, met me at a diner that afternoon to go over logistics. No paperwork with Francis's name on it. No confirmation emails he could stumble across. Full house, 3-bedroom, 1 storage unit rental for anything that doesn't fit the new place, Renata said, scanning my list. We can start tomorrow at 6 a.m. and be done before dark. You've done this before, I said. More than you'd think, she said, not unkindly. Most women don't wait until they're 7 months pregnant to figure it out. You're smarter than most of my clients. I didn't answer that. I just handed her the deposit in an envelope and thanked her. That night, alone in the house for the first time in years, I walked through every room slowly. Not to say goodbye, to make one final list. The lamp in the living room that used to be my grandmother's. The armchair Francis brought from his bachelor apartment that I'd hated for 6 years and was finally, gleefully, taking with me out of spite. My phone buzzed. A text from Francis. A photo of a hotel pool, blue water, palm trees, no people in it. Wish you were here, the caption said. I looked at the photo for a long time. Then I looked at the reservation printout in my folder, the one with 2 names on it, his and Claire's, same dates, same resort. A pool that looked exactly like the one in his photo. I didn't text back right away. When I finally did, I wrote, "Looks beautiful, get some rest." He wrote back a heart emoji, then nothing for 6 hours. The next morning I woke up at 5, made coffee I didn't drink, and stood at the front window watching the street light. At 6:04, a moving truck the size of a small building pulled into the driveway. Renata knocked twice, and I opened the door to a crew of 8 people already pulling on gloves. Talk me through the plan, I said. Master bedroom first, since it takes longest, Renata said. Living room and kitchen after. Nursery last, since you said you wanted to pack that yourself. I nodded. My hands weren't shaking anymore. By 7 a.m., the bedroom was down to bare walls, mattress gone, dresser gone, the closet stripped of everything, but a few of Francis's shirts I left hanging, deliberately like a note. By 8, the living room was an empty box of hardwood floor and sunlight, the couch and TV, and every framed photo of the 2 of us loaded into the truck. One of the movers found a box of old photo albums in the hall closet, hours from before the wedding, and asked if it was going or staying. Going, I said. Everything that's mine goes. He didn't argue, he carried it out. Around 10, my phone rang, not Francis. His mother, Diane, calling about baby shower plans for the following month. Everything all right, dear? Diane asked when I answered, my voice tight from directing furniture through a doorway. You sound busy. Just organizing, I said. I'll call you back. I hung up before she could ask what I was organizing. Diane didn't know yet. Nobody did, except Paula and 8 strangers in matching polo shirts working through my kitchen like a surgical team. By noon, the kitchen was down to bare counters, every appliance boxed, even the light bulbs unscrewed and wrapped in newspaper at Renata's suggestion. Some clients like to leave the house completely dark, she said. Says more than words do. I told her to do it. Every bulb, every room. At 1, I stopped the crew for lunch and walked through the nursery alone. I told them I wanted to pack it myself, and I meant it. I folded each tiny onesie by hand, wrapped the mobile that hung over the crib in bubble wrap like it was made of glass, packed the ultrasound photos into a small keepsake box, the same photos Francis had glanced at for 2 seconds before going back to his phone. I sat on the floor of the empty nursery for exactly 1 minute before Renata knocked and asked if I was ready to keep going. Ready, I said, and got back to work. By 3, the crew moved to the garage, clearing tools, the extra freezer, boxes of things Francis had promised for years to sort through and never had. One of them found the folder behind the paint cans, hotel receipts, watch receipts, the printout with Claire Ingram's name on it, and asked if it belonged in a box. That one comes with me personally, I said, and slid it into my bag. By 4:30, the house was a shell. Footsteps echoed. My voice bounced off bare walls when I called out to Renata about the last few boxes in the hallway. At 5, the truck pulled away, my new address written on a slip of paper in Renata's pocket. I stood alone in the empty living room for a moment, listening to nothing. No hum of the refrigerator, no tick of the wall clock, already boxed. Just my own breathing and the baby shifting inside me like she felt the quiet too. I checked my phone. Francis's flight landed at 11 the next morning. I had 18 hours left, and one more thing to do before this house stopped being mine to finish. I drove to the new place first, a small rented house on the other side of Sunbury that Paula had helped me lease under my maiden name 3 weeks earlier, and watched Renata's crew start unloading the truck into rooms that would be full again by midnight. Then I drove back to the empty house one last time, a single folder in my hands, and knelt down on the bare kitchen floor to set it exactly where he'd see it first. Francis's flight landed at 11 the next morning. I know because his location pin, still shared from an app he'd forgot to turn off, showed him taxiing to the gate right on schedule. I was 3 miles away by then, sitting in my new kitchen, unpacking a box of mugs with Renata's crew long gone and the baby's mobile already hung over the crib in the next room. My phone sat face up on the counter. I watched it instead of the box in front of me. At 12:47, it rang. Francis. I let it ring twice before I answered. Pauline, his voice was strange, thin. Pauline, where is everything? Where's what? I said. The house, he said. The furniture, everything's gone, there's nothing here. What happened? Were we robbed? Did you call the police? I didn't call the police, I said. There's a folder on the kitchen floor, you should read it. Silence on the line. Then I heard paper, the sound of him crouching down, tearing the folder open. What is this? He said, his voice climbing. A divorce petition? Pauline, what the hell is this? Page 2 has the custody filing, I said. Page 4's got the photos from your office. Page 6 is the hotel receipts. I'd start at the beginning if I were you. You went through my things, you had me investigated. I had myself informed, I said. There's a difference. He started shouting then, something about how I couldn't just take everything, how the house was half his, how I had no right. I let him finish. Then I told him the movers had photographed and logged every item against ownership records for 2 weeks, and Paula Vance would be happy to walk him through the documentation. Paula Vance, he repeated. You've been planning this. How long, Pauline? How long has this been going on? About as long as you and Claire, I said, and hung up. He called back 4 times in the next 10 minutes. I didn't answer any of them. On the 5th call, I picked up just long enough to hear him say my name before I set the phone face down on the counter and went back to unpacking mugs. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a different problem. Netflix asking if I wanted to remove a device that had just tried to log in from an unfamiliar location. I tapped remove. Then the smart thermostat app pinged, a login attempt from Francis's phone, denied automatically since I'd swapped the account to my name that morning, time to lock the moment his flight landed. Then the shared cloud storage. Then the joint credit card app, flashing a decline notice for a charge at an airport bar. 10 minutes, 4 systems, one man standing in an empty house, realizing he had access to nothing. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautious. "Pauline, it's Diane." Francis's mother, breathless, clearly relaying something secondhand. "Francis just called me hysterical. He says you cleared out the whole house. Is that true?" "It's true," I said. "Pauline, he's 7 months, you're 7 months pregnant. Why would you do something like this to him?" "Ask him about Claire Ingram," I said. "Ask him about the hotel 2 towns over. Ask him about the baby moon he took without me." There was a long pause. "What are you talking about?" "Ask him," I said again, and ended the call before Diane could argue. I felt bad for exactly 4 seconds. Then I remembered every ultrasound Francis had ignored and the feeling passed. An hour later, Francis called from a different number, a coworker's phone maybe, since his own line kept declining now that the shared plan had been split. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, calmer this time, almost pleading. "Pauline, this is insane," the voicemail said. "You can't just erase me from my own life. I'll fight this. I'll get my own lawyer." "You think a folder on the floor scares me?" I played it once, then deleted it. That afternoon, Paula called with an update. Francis had shown up at her office unannounced, demanding to see her, refusing to leave the lobby until building security asked him to. "He wasn't happy," Paula said, dry. "Told my receptionist you'd ambushed him. I told him to have his attorney contact my office. He didn't have an attorney yet." Didn't love hearing that. "What did he say?" "He said, and I'm quoting, 'She can't just do this to me.' I told him you already had." I laughed for the first time in weeks. It surprised me how good it felt. By evening, Francis had apparently called Renata's moving company directly, trying to get information about where his things had gone. Renata called me to check before saying anything. "He's threatening to call the police, says it's theft," she told me. I told him every item's logged against ownership, records his wife's attorney has on file, and if he wants to file a report, the responding officer's going to ask to see those records too. He hung up on me. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me," Renata said. "This is Tuesday for me." At 8 that night, my doorbell rang. Not at the new house, Francis didn't have that address yet, but a text came through from an unknown number, a photo of the empty living room at our old house, captioned only, "Come back. We can fix this." I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another text. "I'll tell everyone what you did. Your parents, my parents. Everyone will know you did this to a pregnant man." A pregnant man? I read that line twice and set the phone down on the counter, laughing again, quieter this time. At 9, Claire Ingram texted me. I didn't even know she had my number until the message came through. "I think we should talk," it read. "This isn't what you think." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back 4 words. "I don't think anything, I know." She didn't respond after that. I found out later, from a mutual acquaintance who worked in the same building, that Claire had spent that same evening fielding a very different phone call from Denise, the wife of the coworker who'd hosted that poker night, asking exactly how long her husband had known about Francis and Claire and said nothing. By the time I turned off the lights in my new bedroom that night, Francis had called 9 times, texted 16 times, and sent 1 email to an address I'd already stopped checking. Paula sent me a single message before I fell asleep. "He'll retain counsel by Thursday," it read. "When he does, everything we've built holds. Sleep, you earned it." I did sleep, better than I had in months. In the morning, my phone showed 4 missed calls from an unfamiliar 900 number and 1 voicemail from Francis, his voice cracked and different from anything I'd heard from him before. "Pauline," the voicemail said, "I lost my job today. Someone at the office found out about Claire. HR called it a conflict of interest. I have nothing left. Please call me back." I sat with that voicemail for a long moment, phone against my ear, replaying the part where his voice broke on the word, nothing. Then I opened my calendar. saw the date circled 3 weeks out for my next prenatal appointment, and closed the voicemail without calling him back. Francis found a lawyer by Thursday, exactly like Paula predicted. His name was Marcus Whitfield, and his first move was a letter accusing me of unlawful removal of marital property and demanding immediate return of every item taken from the house. Paula read the letter over the phone to me, laughing halfway through. "He wants the couch back," she said. "I'm going to enjoy responding to this." Her response, 3 pages long, included the full inventory log, the ownership documentation, and copies of the hotel receipts, the withdrawal records, and the airport itinerary with Claire Ingram's name on it, all filed as exhibits. She sent it the same afternoon. By evening, Francis was calling my mother. "He told her I'd had a breakdown," my mother said when she called me, worried. "He said you weren't thinking clearly, that pregnancy hormones made you do something drastic, that he was scared for the baby." "I'm fine, Mom," I said. "I've never thought more clearly in my life." He sounded really upset, Pauline. "He should be," I said. "Ask him about Claire Ingram." My mother went quiet on the phone the same way Diane had. 2 days later, she called back to apologize, having done exactly what I told her to and gotten a very different story out of Francis when she pushed. Francis's next move came through Marcus, a formal request for emergency mediation, citing concerns about the mother's mental stability as grounds for expedited custody discussions. I read the filing sitting at my new kitchen table, hand pressed flat against the paper like I could stop the words from being real. "He's trying to use the baby," I said to Paula. "He's trying to scare you," she said. "It won't work. Every filing he makes gets weaker the second the judge sees your documentation next to his. Mental instability doesn't hold up against 140 pages of receipts." She was right, but it didn't stop the fear from sitting in my chest for 2 full days. That weekend, Francis showed up at my new house. I don't know how he found the address. Later, I learned Renata's paralegal had let it slip to Marcus during a records request, an oversight Paula fixed with one furious phone call. He stood on my porch, unshaven, in the same shirt he'd worn on the flight home. I opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. "Pauline, please," he said. "Just let me talk to you, 5 minutes." "You have a lawyer," I said. "Talk to him." "I don't want a lawyer between us," he said. "I want my wife. I want my daughter to have a father in the house." "You had that," I said. "You chose a hotel room with Claire instead." His face changed at her name, something between guilt and anger. "That was a mistake," he said. "One mistake. You're punishing me for one mistake." 6 stays at a hotel loyalty account isn't one mistake, Francis, I said. "It's a pattern." "I have the dates." He stepped closer to the door. I stepped back, keeping the chain taut, and told him if he didn't leave, I'd call the police myself this time. He left, but not before telling me, voice low and cold, that I'd regret doing this to him once the baby came and I realized I needed him. I called Paula the second his car pulled away. "He showed up," I said. "Uninvited, wouldn't leave until I threatened police." "Document the time, get a screenshot of any texts before and after," she said. "We're filing for a no-contact provision in the custody order this week. Judges don't love unannounced visits during active litigation." 2 days later, another problem surfaced, this one financial. I found a lien filed against the new house, the small rental Paula had helped me lease, claiming Francis had partial ownership through funds he alleged came from a joint account. It was a bluff, thin and desperate, but it froze my ability to make any changes to the lease until a judge reviewed it. "He's throwing everything he has," Paula said when I called her, furious. "This is what people do when they're losing. They make noise. We'll get it dismissed in a week, but it's designed to scare you, not win." It worked a little. I spent 3 sleepless nights convinced some judge somewhere would decide Francis deserved half of a house he'd never even seen. Then Denise called me, the wife from the poker night, the one Paula had told me to write down and not call. "I heard what he did to you," she said. "I want you to know something. My husband knew about Claire for months. He never told me. I found out from a friend of a friend last week, same time everyone else did." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "Don't be," Denise said. "I filed for divorce yesterday. I wanted to thank you, actually. If you hadn't blown this whole thing up, I might never have found out at all." I hung up feeling something I hadn't expected. Not guilt, not satisfaction, just a strange, quiet solidarity with a woman I'd never planned to know this well. Francis's next move was smaller, meaner. He called my obstetrician's office, claiming to be concerned about my mental state and asking them to share notes from my appointments. The office called me immediately, confused and apologetic, refusing to release anything without my consent, but the attempt itself left me shaking for an hour. Paula filed a complaint the same day, attaching it to the growing custody file as evidence of harassment. "He's making my case for me," she said. "Every one of these moves goes in the folder next to the hotel receipts." By the following week, Marcus Whitfield quietly withdrew the mental stability custody claim without explanation. Paula suspected he'd finally seen the full evidence packet and realized it made his client look worse, not better, every time he escalated. Francis tried one last thing before the mediation date arrived. He sent an email, long, rambling, alternating between apology and blame, ending with a line that stayed with me longer than I wanted it to. "I know I lost you the day I walked into that office with Claire. I just didn't think you'd let me lose everything else too." I read it twice, then I forwarded it to Paula without comment. "Save that one," she wrote back. "That's practically a confession." The mediation date landed on a Tuesday, 3 weeks before my due date. Both of us set to sit across a table with our attorneys and a court-appointed mediator, and finally put a number, a custody schedule, and a legal end to 11 years of marriage. I packed my folder the night before, the real one now, thick with everything Paula and I had built since that afternoon in the coffee shop, and set it by the front door where I'd see it first thing in the morning. The mediation room was small gray carpet, a long table, 2 water pitchers nobody touched. Francis sat across from me with Marcus Whitfield beside him, both in suits, Francis's tie slightly crooked like he'd tied it in the car. He didn't look at me when I walked in. Paula set our folder on the table with a quiet thud that made Marcus glance at it twice. The mediator, a woman named Ruth Alden, opened with the basics: property division, custody schedule, support, standard language until Paula slid the first exhibit across the table. 6 documented hotel stays, Paula said, charged to a joint account, coinciding with claimed work travel that HR at Mr. Nash's former employer has confirmed did not exist. Marcus opened his mouth. Francis put a hand on his arm and cut him off before he could speak. "This is a smear campaign," Francis said. "None of this proves anything." "Exhibit 4 is a printed itinerary for a resort reservation," Paula said, sliding another page across. "Under Mr. Nash's name and the name Claire Ingram, for the exact dates originally booked as a baby moon for his pregnant wife." Silence. Ruth Alden looked up from the page, then at Francis. "Do you dispute this document?" she asked. Francis stared at the table. "No," he said quietly. "Then let's move to the custody discussion," Ruth said. Marcus tried a different angle, arguing Francis deserved substantial visitation despite the affair, citing his involvement in the pregnancy. Paula didn't raise her voice. She just slid across a printed calendar, every missed appointment highlighted in red, 7 of them, next to a column marked "Reason Given." "Team lunch," Paula read aloud. "Client emergency. Golf with a colleague. Mr. Nash missed 7 scheduled prenatal appointments in 5 months, including the 20-week anatomy scan." Francis's jaw tightened. "I was working," he said. "You were in a hotel room with Claire Ingram 3 of those 7 times," Paula said. "We have the receipts stamped with the same dates." He didn't answer that one. Ruth Alden turned to me directly. "Mrs. Nash, what are you asking for regarding custody?" "Primary physical custody," I said. "Supervised visitation until he can show a consistent, documented pattern of involvement. I'm not trying to erase him. I'm trying to protect her from what I lived through." Francis's face went red. "You can't just decide that," he said, voice rising. "She's my daughter too." "She hasn't been born yet, Francis," I said. "And you've already missed 7 appointments and taken your girlfriend on her baby moon. I'm not deciding anything." "You already did." Marcus tried to interject about emotional manipulation and punitive intent, but Ruth cut him off, saying the documentation spoke for itself and asked both sides to move to financial terms. That's when Francis's calm broke completely. "You emptied my house," he said, standing halfway out of his chair. "You took everything I own and left me a folder like I'm some kind of criminal. Do you know what that felt like?" coming home to nothing. Yes, I said, I know exactly what that felt like. I felt it the day I stood outside your office window and watched you hold another woman like she mattered more than the child I was carrying. The room went quiet. Even Marcus stopped writing. Francis sat back down slowly, some of the color draining from his face. I didn't think you saw that, he said, quieter now. I saw all of it, I said. The blinds were half open. I stood there for almost a minute. You never even looked up. Ruth Alden let the silence sit before speaking again. Given the documentation presented, she said, I'd recommend both parties consider the financial terms Ms. Vance has outlined, rather than proceed to a contested hearing that will only extend costs and delay resolution. Paula slid the settlement proposal across the table. Full ownership of the marital home's proceeds to me, given the documented financial negligence. An even split of remaining joint accounts, minus the withdrawals tied to hotel stays and the watch, which came directly off Francis's share. Primary custody, supervised visitation, pending a review in 6 months. Marcus leaned over and murmured something to Francis. Francis stared at the paper for a long time, hands flat on the table, breathing slow like he was trying to keep himself still. If I don't sign this, he said, not looking up, what happens? We go to a contested hearing, Paula said. Everything in that folder becomes part of the public record. Every hotel stay, every missed appointment, every dollar. Your new employer, should you find one, is welcome to search the docket. Francis looked at me then, really looked, for the first time since I'd walked into the room. Is this really what you want? He asked. For it to end like this? You ended it the day you booked that resort, I said. I just made sure it ended on paper in daylight where everyone could see exactly what happened. He picked up the pen. He signed slowly, each line, like he was hoping something would stop him before he finished. Nothing did. When he set the pen down, Marcus gathered the papers without a word, and Ruth Alden noted the time for the record. We're done here, she said. Francis stood first. He paused at the door, one hand on the frame, and looked back at me one last time. I hope she looks like you, he said. Not me. I didn't answer. I watched him walk out, the door swinging shut behind him, and for the first time in months, the room felt like it belonged entirely to me. Paula started packing the folder back into her briefcase, exhibit by exhibit, the same documents that had built a case out of nothing but patience and a legal pad in a coffee shop months earlier. How do you feel? She asked. I put a hand on my stomach, felt the baby shift under my palm, and realized I didn't feel triumphant. I felt done. Finished with a version of my life that had cost me more than I'd let myself admit until this exact moment. Ready, I said, for the next part. Paula smiled, closed her briefcase, and told me the settlement would be finalized within 30 days. Plenty of time, she said, before the due date. I walked out of that gray room and into a parking lot full of ordinary daylight, and for the first time since the day I stood outside that office window, I didn't feel like I was still waiting for something terrible to happen. The settlement finalized 19 days after the mediation, faster than Paula had promised. Francis signed the last document by mail. He didn't show up in person. He didn't call. I went into labor 11 days after that in the new house, in a nursery with a mobile that used to hang in a different home and now hung over a crib in one that was entirely mine. My daughter was born at 4:12 in the morning, 7 pounds 2 ounces, and the first thing the nurse said when she handed her to me was that she had my eyes and my mother's stubborn chin. Nothing of Francis's, not that I was looking. I named her Rosalind. Nobody's idea but mine. Francis found out about the birth from a text I sent through Paula's office, factual, 3 lines, no invitation to visit. He replied one word: congratulations. He tried to schedule his first supervised visit 2 weeks later, showing up 15 minutes late to the family center Paula had arranged, hair uncombed, apologizing to the supervisor before he'd even said hello to his own daughter. I watched through the one-way glass for exactly 4 minutes before I couldn't anymore and asked to be told when it was over. He came to 3 more visits over the following month. Missed 2. Rescheduled 1 to a day that conflicted, the supervisor told me, with a job interview he didn't get. I heard through Denise, who I'd started meeting for coffee every few weeks by then, that Francis had gone through 2 jobs since the divorce, both ending within months. both times after coworkers found out about the affair and the empty house and the folder that had apparently become office gossip 2 counties over. Claire Ingram left the company not long after Frances did, transferred to a different branch in a city an hour away. Denise told me she'd heard Claire complaining to a mutual friend that Frances had promised her things he never delivered: a real relationship, a real future, none of which survived the 6 months after his divorce actually started. Diane called me once more, a month after Rosalind was born, asking quietly if she could come see her granddaughter. I thought about it for 2 days before saying yes. She showed up with a small gift, sat carefully on my couch, and never once brought up the empty house or asked me to forgive her son. I respected her for that more than I expected to. Renata sent me a bouquet the week Rosalind was born, no card, just a note that said, "Congratulations, you did it right." I kept the note in the same drawer where I'd once kept a folder of hotel receipts behind paint cans. Paula stopped by 6 weeks after the birth, official business mostly. Papers to sign confirming the 6-month custody review had been pushed to a full year given Frances's inconsistent visitation. She held Rosalind for exactly 90 seconds before handing her back, uncomfortable in the way people are who spend their careers around other people's worst days. "You did the hard part already," Paula told me at the door. "Everything after this is just maintenance." She wasn't entirely right. There were still hard days. A missed support payment in month 3 that took 2 phone calls and a formal notice to fix. A birthday party Frances showed up to 40 minutes late, Rosalind already asleep in her stroller by the time he arrived. A voicemail once at 2 in the morning, Frances's voice slurred, asking if there was any chance at all, that we could try again. I deleted that one too, same as the first, but most days weren't hard anymore. Most days were ordinary, which after that year felt like its own kind of victory. Grocery runs with Rosalind strapped to my chest, naps that actually happened. A kitchen that stayed exactly as messy or as clean as I left it, because nobody else's dishes showed up in my sink overnight. On Rosalind's first Christmas, I put up a small tree in the corner of the living room, the same living room that had been bare hardwood floor and echoing footsteps a year earlier. I hung one ornament from my grandmother's old collection, the same one Renata's crew had wrapped so carefully it survived the move without a single scratch. I stood there for a moment, ornament in hand, Rosalind babbling in her bouncer nearby, and thought about the woman who'd sat in a parking lot for 11 minutes memorizing a stranger's face through an office window. She felt like someone I used to know rather than someone I still was. Frances moved 2 towns over eventually, closer to his mother, working a job Denise described as smaller than the one he lost. He still calls sometimes, mostly to confirm visitation, occasionally to ask how Rosalind's doing in a voice that sounds, more and more, like a man who understands exactly what he threw away. I don't hate him anymore. I don't think about him much at all, which took longer to arrive at than the anger did, but arrived just the same. What I think about when I think about any of it is the folder, not the papers inside it, the divorce petition, the photos, the bank statements, all of it filed away and finished now. I think about the moment I knelt on that bare kitchen floor and set it down exactly where he'd see it first. I didn't need to scream at him. I didn't need a scene, a slammed door, a public confrontation in front of his coworkers or mine. I just needed one folder, one empty house, and enough patience to let the truth arrive on its own terms. Being pregnant never made me weak. It made me calculated. And when Frances finally walked back into that house, expecting to find his wife waiting quietly in the bedroom, what he found instead was proof that quiet had never meant weak at all. Stories like this one tend to leave a few quiet truths behind. That silence can be its own kind of preparation, not weakness. That documenting the truth almost always beats confronting it out loud, especially when the stakes are your child's future. And that the people who betray you rarely expect you to already be 3 steps ahead. Have you ever stayed quiet on purpose, waiting for the right moment to act? If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.